All right, let's get started. Welcome. Hi, Alicia. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Awesome. Welcome to week 2, live lecture 2. I know you said you won't be in here very long, and that's fine. That's kind of why we do the recording. So if you miss anything, you can go back and listen to the recording. Hopefully you guys are getting started with your design process steps for your assignment 2. And if you did not get a chance yet to listen to the lecture from yesterday, it is posted in the live sessions area. I did go over, let's go forward here because I actually have next slides that kind of refer to this. Just make sure you're getting in your work by this Saturday before midnight. Your initial discussion posts were due yesterday. If you happen to miss it, just post it anyway. You'll get some partial credit for it for sure. But just make sure you're responding to at least 2 other peer posts. So yesterday, just like a little recap of what we went over, we went over the overview of discussion 2, talked about what it is they're asking. It seemed pretty straightforward. A lot of you guys are doing really well on that so far, so I didn't see any discrepancies. So just keep the conversation going and, just gain as much as you can from each other just by, looking at each other's chosen brands and it will definitely help you see evolutions of brands throughout time, trends, and just different elements within a brand that you definitely have to be aware of when you're creating a brand identity system. We also went over what makes a logo work. This is very important because this is kind of what we do, and what works is, obviously something that you need to cross-check your logo with. So the 5 characteristics of what makes a meaningful and effective logo is what we went over yesterday. So hopefully you will be cross-checking your work with those 5 characteristics. We also discussed the logo design tips, going forward with your designs. Some tips and tricks, things to kind of be aware of so that you're aligning your logo appropriately. We also went over your assignment 2, just what you guys needed to do, and I started a demo of the 3. I didn't show the sketches, so you guys are to do 20 thumbnail sketches, preferably on 1 page so that you just keep it all together and you're not handing in like 20 pages of, separate pages of thumbnails. But don't forget to number them. You'll be attaching those, and that's by pencil, pen, pencil on paper. If you do have a Wacom tablet, and I didn't mention this yesterday, if you have like a tablet that you use to freehand on that goes straight to the computer, you can do it that way. What I would suggest is kind of maybe setting something up in either InDesign or Illustrator. We have maybe 20 boxes, and then you go in 20 little squares. You go in and kind of sketch into each square. If you're doing it by hand on paper, you might want to do the same thing where you're drawing out a ruler. Make sure you don't have to do it so perfectly, but it helps to have those squares set up so that you're kind of getting all of your work inside. You don't have to do squares, but it kind of allows you to get, just makes it look a little bit nicer. So, and then you kind of know how many that you have, and it's just not all over the place. So yeah, we just went over that, and you guys will be designing from there your 3. You're going to kind of take the strongest concept from those 20 thumbnails, and you're going to build upon that in a design rough in Illustrator, and you're going to create 3 different logo marks with that concept. All right, today we're going to do an assessment 2 overview, but really it's going to be kind of showing you guys where to look for your midterm quiz, because that's kind of what the assessment is for this week. It's a quiz on basically what the readings and videos have been since week 1 and this week. So I'll definitely show you where to go for that. We're going to talk about brand identity, and logo differentiation, the differences between the 3. And again, that's in your readings as well. So if you got a chance to check out those articles, it also explains the differences there with that. We're going to look at examples of brand identities and look at design process examples. But before I get started, did you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to show anything, any work that you want to show that you're working on? We kind of have, you know, obviously the open critique. I have this open for anybody who wants to show their stuff. If not, no pressure.
No, I haven't started on my assignment 2 yet because I was a little bit, how do I put that? I wasn't really sure how to do the thumbnail thing until you started explaining it for me to actually draw it on paper.
Oh, okay.
Because one of my other teachers had us actually do it on the computer, so I didn't know how you wanted us to do that.
Yeah, and you know, I know what you're talking about because I've taught classes here that there are instructions you can do it on the computer. So there are kind of like different different projects that ask for different things. So yeah, but I will accept if you do, like I said, the tablet is really kind of not a hand. It's hand done, but it's not like pencil on paper. But because it's like a hand done by hand type thing, I would accept something like that too.
Okay.
Yep.
And I agree with you. The hand on my assignment 1 was kind of really weird, and I didn't notice it until you started explaining.
You know, and it's like sometimes you don't think about those things, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I can totally see what it look like. That's why it's always good to kind of get a, you know, some collaboration from other people, and you know, sometimes it just happens that way. I've designed things, and people look at it and they're like, that looks like, you know, totally what I didn't even, because I've been working on it for so long, I didn't see it. And
Yeah.
then somebody else looks at it. I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. No problem. That's all part of the learning experience, and you know why we kind of look over things. So, all right. All right. So, you know, when we're talking about brand enhancement, there's so many things that go into this. This is kind of like your process steps too. And you guys, I kind of talked about this yesterday, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. But brand enhancement is basically you're covering all the bases, not just with the logo, but with all of the brand identity pieces. And you can do the same design process with your brand. And this little graph is kind of showing you, you know, some things that are involved into brand enhancement. If you're looking to kind of enhance your brand, you know, obviously there's a process to it as well. So we have the brief, the research, references, sketching. So it's pretty similar to what we talked about yesterday with your logo process steps. So this is kind of a nice little circular wheel of those steps. This is actually, we talked about this yesterday, the 5 principles of effective logo design: simple, memorable, timeless, versatile, appropriate. And this is also in your readings. I'm going to show you in a second here. So it kind of breaks it down into more of like, what is simple mean? What does memorable mean? So it breaks it down in each descriptive word, descriptions for each word that is shown here, so you kind of understand a little bit better. And I did talk about this yesterday too, but just make sure that you're hitting upon those, these principles for your logo. All right, and before I actually go on, let me go into Canvas and just show you really quickly. Well, maybe not really quickly, but open this up here. You'll want to go into modules if you haven't checked this out yet, which you should, because this is part of your daily or weekly materials that you should be reading. I'm pointing this out. Go to course media in your modules. I'm pointing this out again because this is what your quiz is going to be on, your midterm quiz for assessment 2. So make sure that you're going through all these articles that are listed, the videos that are listed, and also the lynda.com videos that are listed in each week. There's week 1 and week 2. So go through all of those before you attempt the assessment quiz, okay? Just really great supplemental resources. And a lot of them are just short videos or articles that aren't real long. But I wanted to point out a couple here that I was mentioning. So designing a brand identity. This is an great article that tells you kind of the differences between, I don't know why this thing pops up here. Trying to get rid of this thing here. Whoops. And I just clicked on the wrong. the wrong thing here, trying to get rid of this pop-up. Let me see if I can get rid of this pop-up here. There we go. So this talks about brand, identity, logo, the differences between them. But then also, I wanted to show you this because this is kind of where I pulled this little nice graph from, showing you this, the characteristics, the principles of effective logo design. So this is really nice because it goes through kind of very detailed about each one of these. So each phase, design brief, we talked about the logo, designing a logo, and it actually shows you, like the evolution of the design, kind of what designers go through. It shows you sketches of people's work and kind of how it goes from start to finish in regards to that. And that's how it's really important to really do your steps, because like I said, that's what makes your logo more meaningful, because you're kind of doing that research. Another article in here, 10 common mistakes in design. This is kind of really kind of a neat article to read about, because it tells you the mistakes. So it's nice to know the mistakes so we don't do them, right? So, designed by an amateur, you can read more about that. That's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, relies on trends. We talked about this yesterday too. The cliche type of look. Number 3, uses raster images. We talked about that yesterday as well. You want to do your logo, you want to create it in a vector-based program like Illustrator, else you might get some pixelization depending on how much you blow it up or need to blow it up. Number 4, contains stock art. Why is that? Why do you think stock art is probably not the best option for a logo?
Probably because it's not your own work.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your own work, but how accessible? Can anybody use it?
Stock art, yeah. Like it's kind of like getting something off Google. If it's on Google, somebody has it.
Right, it's like free for anybody, so anybody can use it. So what does that mean? If anybody can use it, you probably see it a lot, right?
Right, it's something that's not original.
Right, so it's like more generic. It becomes so like overused, and you can tell sometimes definitely it's stock art. So it's not memorable. It's not, yeah. So it should be unique and original. Also, licensing agreements need to be held to as well. Designing for yourself rather than the client. This is huge, because I think, and a lot of students get into this, and I've been there before, I know. You start thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this because I like this, and you end up doing this really cool logo, but doesn't necessarily align with the actual brand. It doesn't really show who they are, because you may be just using a typeface that you think looks cool for that. So just make sure you're designing for yourself rather than the client, and this is why the process steps are really important. Overly complex, that's the thing. Like when you overdo a logo, it's going to be harder to view. It's not going to be as versatile, because just think about all the places that a logo can be on, different materials, sizes, orientations. You really want to keep it as simple as possible, because the more complex, it'll be harder to see. The details will be lost. So that's kind of something to think about. Relies on color for its effect. So look, this example here, it might lose its identity if it's, on the left here, it's showing 2 circles with just a variated hue of color. And look what it looks like when it's black and white or gray. It just looks like a circle. So it loses that nice 2-circle detail. Whereas the one on the right, you've got some variation within the white space that can show you, a little bit more of a dynamic look to it. Sorry, I have a phone call coming in. All right, poor choice of font. This is also another thing that is a little bit of a struggle with some students, because typically they don't, typically sometimes we just tend to, and I want to say you guys, but I've had students just use fonts that are on their computer, and they don't really go out and explore, other fonts that might be more appropriate. Sorry about that. Poor choice.
Do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that you have to learn too. I mean, like I said yesterday, you can you could probably take 2 years of typography classes because there's so much information and so much background information and history with the typefaces. So,
To be honest, some of it of my work from week one was a little rushed. I just got back from Tennessee, so it's everything is all jumbled up for the last 2 weeks. So I was trying to get it done.
yeah, and that's another, you want to have some time for your process steps and really kind of thinking it through for everything. So you can definitely tell when it's rushed.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's why, and 4 weeks in this class, it goes quick. So
it
that
does. It does.
yeah, time you need to revise things is so important.
This week will be better, I promise.
All right. Yeah, I know. I understand you guys. I have a life too, and I, have the same issues that pop up in your life as well. And I was an online student before, and I know the challenges of balancing everything. So, trust me, I get it. It can be tough for sure.
It is.
All right, too many fonts. This is another thing that you need to avoid just because it causes this disconnect. It's not cohesive. It doesn't unify. Copying others as well, you kind of want to avoid. But these are really cool, like little articles that you guys could definitely check out. Here's another article in week one that talks about creating a logo that properly presents your business. So kind of little things to think about to follow along the essentials. So if you want to read up on that, it's just a little short article there. That's kind of a cool little article to read up on. And then you have these like little 4-minute 3-minute videos here that kind of go about telling you what a brand is. And you might know what a brand is, but it might give you some extra details that you might not have known. And so definitely would check that out. The 5 secrets to make your logo stand out. Check this out before you start your logo process. And then it tells you down here kind of what it covers. You also have lynda.com videos, which kind of break it down into these short little videos that are very helpful as well. There was one article down here I thought was a really cool thing. Rule of sketching in the design process. This is in week 2. And since you guys are doing kind of that right now, I thought this would be relevant to showing you guys to definitely check out. Telling you kind of the purpose behind the rule of sketching. Why is it so important? Because sometimes I've had students that do not want to sketch. They say, I don't want to do it. I can't do it, which I think is kind of a little, stubborn on their part because, why wouldn't you want to try it at least if you know it's going to help you as a designer and also, help you grow as a designer and help your work look better. So why not, obviously try it. It's not like you have to be a famous illustrator and make it look really nice. I'm telling you, just like yesterday, I am not good at sketching or illustrating. But, thumbnails aren't supposed to look, super tight. So it's just basically your ideas coming into play. So it says 5 uses for sketching and design. So you have the rapid concept development. I started this out before when I had projects where I'm just basically dealing with lines, not even a logo, just like how does this logo, what are the adjectives, what is this making me feel like, and I'll actually just sketch out just abstract lines or stuff to kind of get me started. Here's some examples here of somebody kind of getting a little bit more detail with their thumbnail sketches, but basic composition or layout. So this is another way if you wanted to kind of lay out a grid structure maybe for an ad or like a website, you could definitely use that for that in regards to that. Here's a website that somebody on the left-hand side sketched out. So it's kind of like, I want to call it a wireframe because but it's more of a thumbnail because it's looser than a wireframe. And that's basically showing the grid structure of what they want to use for the website. And that you can apply that to advertisements, anything that you're working on with a layout, you can do the same thing as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with just the logo itself. There's some other design, and they're different. Sketches are different. Some people have tons of notebooks with sketches in them, just loose sketches. Some are obviously, that's really advanced. You don't have to go that advanced. But, and, you know, and think about other mediums too. You know, I've gone into the watercolors and, you know, paint and stuff like that. You don't have to necessarily ignore the fine art of, you know, the fine art material like paint and other stuff that you can play around with. And I've actually created a book cover that I did all with, I think it was watercolor, and I took a picture of it, and then that picture became part of the cover. So, you know, different techniques can be definitely a really cool way of
Your audio is like really low. Just so
Oh, you know what? I think I might have my hand on my. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me pull up my. I think I have my hand on my microphone here. Sorry about that. But I used a watercolor for my book cover, which was kind of cool because it wasn't like I was strictly on the computer for that. So there could be other, you know, effects that you could apply to. It's kind of like a mixed media type concept. So how to design a logo, 7 most basic rules. This is another article that you can definitely check out. So just, you know, the idea is to just listen to the videos that are, you know, in the week 1 and 2, read the articles that are in there. That's kind of like your reading material for this class. This is very short. Oh no, I thought it ended there. It's actually showing you some examples here. Okay, so it's showing you more of like recognizable brands and kind of explaining each one. Oh, and then also the evolution. It's really cool to see the evolution of really recognizable brands like Starbucks.
Oh wow, that Starbucks first logo is crazy looking.
Yeah, I almost wonder like what year. I wish they had the years. I don't know if it says it in here. No, it doesn't. Like what year that was in when that was designed. I'll find it somewhere, but here's Pepsi. I remember when it was the older logo. It's crazy how that changes. But it's kind of neat to see where logos have evolved. So it's kind of cool. Kind of a cool.
Yeah, in my associate's degree, one of my teachers, he actually pulled up some crazy logos and how they were. Some of them were actually very inappropriate, and they didn't. I don't think they meant to.
Right.
They were very weird and inappropriate.
Like, yeah, I think I've seen some that have like the 2 letters come together and it like forms, it looks like a swear word.
Yeah.
Like the L and the U or something like that. Yeah, it's that's why you always want to get a second look.
Yeah, because you don't catch it, somebody else will.
Exactly, you just never know. And that actually has happened in billboard designs. I remember. Let me see if I can think of or find this here. It was like a ad for a tea kettle from Michael Graves. Did you see that one?
I have no idea.
The
I could have, but I'm not sure.
So let me see. This one, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So this was a big, because if you squinted your eyes, they're saying that it looked like Hitler.
I could see that.
I guess from afar, when you're on the highway and you're going super fast, yeah, it definitely can like form that shape. So yeah, I mean, even ads can do that, billboards for sure. It's kind of fun. It's not just logos, but yeah, it's kind of it's kind of funny to see those for sure. All right, so definitely check those out. Here's some tips on logo design process as well, and more lynda.com videos that kind of go through different material that is relevant to your assessment. So if you go to, while we're talking about it, if you go to your assessment 2 section here, that's where you'll find the quiz. And I don't think there's no time limit. But the quiz is based on week 1 and 2 readings and videos. There are 15 questions on the quiz and it is not timed. Be careful to read the questions to help discourage cheating. Some questions will seem just like others, but the values have changed, or what is asked for has changed. Be sure you know what the question is asking for and the values to use. So obviously I cannot give you like, you know, the questions, but I'm just kind of showing you in the modules where to look for if you wanted to kind of review and study. So, all right. Alrighty, so let's talk about the difference between, because this was in that one website too that I just showed you in your weekly readings. Brand identity, and logo, because we can really kind of use these terms a lot and think they mean the same thing, but they really aren't the same thing. They actually are different. There's different meanings behind them. So this is a nice little breakdown of what each of these means. So brand is a perceived emotional corporate image as a whole. So it's not necessarily just, it's not a logo. So sometimes we get that confused. An identity are visual aspects that form part of the overall brand. So there's a brand, and then there's an identity, and then there's a logo, which identifies a business in its simplest form via the use of a mark or icon. So, you know, knowing those three different terms will really help you talk and communicate not only with your client, but also, you know, as it just makes you sound like, obviously you know what you're doing, you know what each of these mean. And whenever you go and talk about each of these, you kind of know the differences. So that you're more aware of what you're doing in your design steps. You're not just creating a logo, you're also changing the brand and also the identities. It's like an identity system. So let's get inspired and see some of these brand identity examples. So this is the bean. This is a brand, and this is the actual logo itself, cafeteria and cakes. And the identity system is kind of what you're seeing the logo applied to. So when you see identity, that means, that those are the identity pieces. So it could be cups, it could be notebooks, it could be cup holders, sugar packets, for example, packaging, business cards, stationery. So this is the brand identity system. It can also be applied to wraps on cars, trucks, signage, advertisements. So these are the brand identity pieces that form the overall brand. So it's not just the logo. There's also the identities of each of these. And here's merchandise, so it could be even applied to clothing, bags, any type of tags or anything like that can be applied as well. Bags for, selling in the actual store. You see this a lot. So it's like free marketing for sure. Here's one, QC Productions. Here's the logo itself. And then here is the brand identity. And you can see how cohesive it is. And this is another reason why I wanted to show these. Because, you want that logo. If you're going to see that different identity piece, if you're going to see a website separately from all these pieces, you want to make sure that that that's that brand. So keeping it cohesive with the colors, with the typeface, the logo looks the same, maybe just changes color based on the background color. Keeping that cohesiveness is really keeping that brand recognition so that people know that it's part of the brand. Here are some business cards. So it may not look exactly the same on every single identity piece, but there are similar characteristics and elements going on that carry through so that people know, yeah, that's part of that brand. You have the basic elements here, the squares, the colored square, the logo, obviously, and the two color cohesive colors being used on each of these pieces, but in a way that's dynamic. It's not just the boring white background. They're switching it up on the business card. Same with the envelope. There's a website. So using very similar elements on each piece, but making it dynamic looking yet cohesive. Here's another one, logo. This is actually kind of neat because this slide is showing how they came up with this logo, this little icon on the left here. So this is the thought process behind how the concept of the icon came about. So it says the initial union of two professionals represented by two boxes, or where everyone brought a luggage, joining and using the best of each. I don't know if that makes sense, but looks like they're sketching it out in a more abstract way using the golden means, showing the colors, and then this is kind of how it's applied. So they're taking that icon and using it as an aesthetic on the side of the business card, on the back of the business card, making it look more dynamic by, on the flip side of the business card, making it white, on the other side black, making it really nice and contrasted. And here are the other identity pieces. You can see the elements, the similar elements carrying through, making it very unified. A strong brand for sure. Here's for shirts, the whole identity system. Excuse me. Going on here. I have to mute my mic here. Hold on one second. I'm gonna need a drink. Sorry about that. Okay. So it's really cool to see them all together because then you can really tell that it is one brand. Oops. Here's the website, iPad, very similar. Here's another one, Hillary's. This one's kind of neat because it's more, has a more organic, handmade feel, custom goods and custom gifts, almost like a letterpress stamp type of a look. Actually, you can get customized stamps for logos, and that's something kind of interesting. Say if you're applying for a job that's at an ad agency, I've had former students that I went to school with for my master's who actually went and got their logo created as a stamp, and then on their resume, when they sent it to ad agencies, they would stamp their actual resume. And obviously the whole look of the resume was that too, but it was really kind of a unique way to customize a resume, make it look kind of more unique. But this is kind of that whole feel. Business cards. Here's one that's more scientific related, the Amino Science brand here. Applying the logo throughout stationery on the bottom, and then also, through cups, different identity examples. Here's one called Bloom. And they actually have a moleskin up there, USB drives, all the good stuff. Here's a coffee company, and this is kind of their brand, showing how their ads look in a magazine. Separate identity pieces, marketing materials on the upper right-hand corner, table tents, all kinds of different stationery, and then obviously the cup holder with cups on the left. Really cute concept there. All right, I think I'm gonna take a 5-minute break so I can get a water break here for my throat. Do you have any questions before we go on this break here? I know, Alicia, you don't have much time, so hopefully I'll see you when the break is over. If not, like I said, you can listen to the recording, see what you missed.
Okay.
Sound good? Okay, well, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I was trying to get in some lunch here. All right. As we go forward, I don't think we have too much to go over. We might be ending it a little early today, so that might be a good thing. Alicia, I know you have to go, so we'll just finish up the last few things here. I just thought, I'm sorry?
It's okay. I put what I had to do on hold, and it's fine.
Oh, okay. I thought this is kind of cool to see because I think sometimes we wonder how much these logos cost, or I guess what they cost to be made and created. So I wanted to show you guys this. This is pretty much on the right-hand side are logos that we're all pretty much familiar with. The third one down is the Olympics logo. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But Nike was done for $35. I think it was a design student who did that. Twitter, $15. Then you have the Olympics logo, $625,000. Google for free. BP, millions. Pepsi, Coke. So it's kind of funny to see what each logo brand costs when it was originally designed. So what the logo means is more important than what it looks like. So it's not just about the logo, it's the brand experience, the brand overall, the essence of the brand. The logo identifies a business or product in its simplest form. We talked about that yesterday. So, you might not want to put everything into the logo. It's just going to be the mask of the company. And then the other pieces will definitely explain more about what the brand is all about. And we talked about this yesterday. What makes a logo work? Again, simple, memorable, timeless, versatile, appropriate. I'm going to drill this into your heads. Just because I think, these are definitely something to think about when you're cross-checking your own logos. Talking about design brief, creative brief. Why do you need a creative brief? Why do you think you need a creative brief? We talked about this a little bit yesterday too.
You need one to make sure that you get everything right. I did a client and I had to do one, and it pretty much signifies how big, what colors to use, what colors not to use, like everything that you need.
Right. So there is a difference between a creative brief and a brand book too, because I think that's kind of what it sounds like. What you did is the brand book where you're showing how to use the logo, what colors to use, and then the creative brief is really what you start to gather the information up. When is the design due? You're having your budget, your deadlines, everything about what the problem is and what you're trying to solve is going into that. So the creative brief is also really good to have as a designer to sit down with your client and go over, because at the end of, and I've had this happen, at the end of projects, you might have a client that said, well, I don't think this really turned out the way that I wanted it to. And unfortunately, it does happen. And as long as you're upfront and you show this client kind of your process, with the creative brief, you're all on the same page, you can fall back to that and say, listen, we talked about this. I had the creative brief. This is where I was coming from. So it's kind of like a good backup for you, to kind of say, hey, this is where we were. We were on the same page, and it kind of supports your concept development. So the creative brief is a strategic plan, a type of map. So basically, how you're going from A to B. The checklist, strategy checklist for a brief is basically you're going to be talking about what is the brand's particular value, voice, and spirit, personality. They might have a mission statement, for example, that you want to place into your not only brand book, but also your brief. Define the brand essence. What is the essence of the brand? What are they all about? How can we be both honest and appealing? How will we position the brand in the marketplace? So these are some of the questions that might be in there. Define the brand promise. How is the competition positioned? Where are they at? Maybe they're not doing so well, so you have a little upper hand there. What do we want in the future? Always good to ask. an answer so that you know if you're continuing on with the project, you kind of know where to evolve everything. How can we differentiate our brand? That's a big challenge because there's so many different brands out there for one product or service doing the same thing, the same product for the most part. It might be different in a little way. So finding those differentiations and then building upon that within your concept is important. It's almost like your niche in a way. How can we account for change? How will this brand change? Is it flexible enough to change in the future? How can we anticipate trends? You know, thinking about ahead of time and it's hard to do because we don't know what the trends are going to be sometimes. So, you know, really kind of trying to have that foresight into that. So it's a verbal standard, the design brief, against which creative solutions can be measured. So not only are you can be adding different things on here like your schedule, deliverables, what's in that, market insight, business objectives, brand profile, production needs, distribution channels, SWOT analysis, competition, consumer profile. So all of this can be included, and it could be very simple too. It doesn't have to have all of this stuff. It can be very simple, or it can be very detailed. Talk about in your brief, who is your brand aimed at? Think about this when you're designing your actual logo for your brand. Who does the audience currently think about? What does the audience currently think about this brand? You know, it might have a really good reputation. Maybe it doesn't. You know, think about that and, you know, take that in consideration. There might be connotations due to the service that it's providing. Maybe it got a bad rap in the news, you know, kind of things that might change some things about how you go forward with your rebrand. What do you want the audience to do? What is it that you want the audience to do? Think about that and make sure that you're hitting upon the needs for that. Here's an example of, you know, call to action. This brand obviously wants you to sign up for free and get into their service here. You know, you could have call to action, shop now, request examples, request samples. There's billboards that call to action. They actually have, you know, their website here, download app, text the ninja to this number. So that's their call of action. So there has to be something that you're asking the audience to do. Facebook us for free, kind of call to action. A lot of the social media stuff here, liking, Facebook, texting, Snapchat now, I mean, Instagram, there's all kinds of different social media options. QR codes were used to be the thing. I'm not sure if they're being used as much or kind of dying out. QR codes on this board here at the very bottom left. And these kind of failed in regards to like, how are you going to scan that with your phone? You know what I mean? Like, if it was on a piece of paper, it'd be another story, but, you know, it's kind of useless unless you have a web address near it, obviously. So here's book now, you know, simple as that. This is what you want your audience to do. So you have this call to action. What is the one critical message we can convey? You know, thinking about that. Whenever you're, you know, you can ask that for your design brief. You can ask the client that. How should we execute this brand strategy? And some of this stuff you'll be answering you know, kind of as you go through your research, but you definitely can ask these questions with your client as well. What are our creative guidelines? There might be guidelines already established, and I think, Alicia, you brought that up with the book that you were referencing as a creative brief. There are, so a creative brief is separate than a brand guideline book. A brand guideline book is basically showing you how to use the logo and how not to use the logo. So let's say if you're a designer and you're coming onto a project and you've never used the logo before, they might have a brand book that is passed on to you either electronically or by hand that shows you how to use that logo in different ways. So it's a way to ensure consistency with the brand so that there's no variation, no mistakes of using it in a different way. because brand recognition is very important. Not every client, not every brand has a brand book, but this is definitely something that a company may want to do. And this is something that if you're building or doing or rebranding or designing a logo for somebody, if they don't have a brand book and you know they have the budget for it, this could be extra work for you guys. You could say, hey, listen, I could do your brand book, you know, and start showing examples of what the logo would look like and other brand identities in the brand book. And that could generate a lot more. I actually did this with a brand book for a church many years ago. She needed a logo. That was the problem. I created the logo. And then I presented her with a brand book. And the brand book showed the logo and how it was supposed to be used. And then I also showed it on how the logo would look on stationery. This is how it will look on a business card. This is how it should look like on a letterhead. This is how it should look like on t-shirts. Anything that was relatable to what she was doing. And they weren't real. They were just mock-ups. But when I showed it to her, she like flipped out. She was like, I need this. I need this, 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 and this. So I generated more work because she saw these mock-ups of the brand book with the logo on it. And she said, you know, I want the stationery. So that's just a little FYI tip for me that you could definitely, you know, monopolize on. Some clients don't have the money for it. So it's just kind of like, you know, depending on the situation too. All right, so we kind of went already over the assessment 2, kind of what to study for the assessment 2. Like I said, it was like 15 questions. And it's material from week 1 and 2. In the course media section, you can go through, look through the articles in the videos, lynda.com. Not only just the videos placed in there, but the lynda.com videos as well. Those are excellent supportive videos. All right, so let's break it down. Let's break down the creative design process. We kind of talked about the process steps. So this is kind of doing it in another way. I'm going to show you some examples here. So we're gathering the information. So we gain knowledge, we gather information. This is the design brief stage as well. So you're asking the client, gathering that information. Here is this is actually from one of my process books. We had to do process books for my master's degree at SCAD. And these process books, we had to actually document every step from A to Z when we got a project started at, you know, for our master's in college. When we started a project, we had to document everything that we did, our process steps. So the book that you see here is what I did. And this actually is a picture of me writing down my notes here. So here's me gathering the information on a particular project, writing what the problem is. So what is the problem? Before beginning the design, sort out what the problem you're trying to address. If you don't know this clearly, ask the client. I mean, you need to be on the same page. Research. So in step 2, we seek understanding to grasp the meaning of the material we gathered, gaining insights. So at this point, after gathering that information, we're doing research. So this is I was doing something that targeted teens. So I had to go out, and this is a picture of me going out and buying all kinds of teen magazines, and I did all kinds of other things too. But so research the problem. Once you know it, research the problem. Sometimes a problem can be solved straight out of your head, but most cases you will need to gain some new information and knowledge. So, you know, immerse yourself into that problem and who their target audience is, just by kind of going through what they would actually do. So I went through a lot of magazines, talking to teenagers. I actually even sent out a survey. That might be something that you might want to do if you're ever in a really in a position where you have a real client, and you might send out a survey to one of the target audiences, asking about certain things, what's important to them. This was just in general, so I can come up with some great ideas. You can actually do social media surveys, Facebook, SurveyMonkey, etc. I have a lot of people chiming in on my Facebook questions about what teenagers are doing today. I was trying to gather information on a good artifact to create for this project. How can I create an artifact, something that the teenagers will be interested in to use? And the whole problem of this particular project was to explain the design process. The whole project was to educate teenagers who were interested in going into graphic design programs, say in college, but explaining what graphic design is in their terms. So I really had to dive into, I didn't know really, my nieces weren't even teenagers then, so I really didn't know what teenagers were into, and this is my research into finding out what they're all about, what they're into, so that I can properly speak to them and choose the right artifacts to get their attention. Brainstorming is phase 3. So we brainstorm, analyze, examine our material in search of an idea. So after you're gathering this information and doing your research, now's the time to brainstorm. This is the fun part. This is actually, I think, the more fun step in the process. And this is just kind of going through some of the brainstorming stages here. Here I was looking at, after gathering the information, getting those surveys back from those teenagers, I was looking at some artifacts that I could use to use as my prop for that intended purpose of explaining what graphic design is, what it's all about, and what we do as designers. So here I am kind of just grabbing just images offline, things that, I'm finding out from teenagers that they're interested in. There's some energy drinks that are kind of more popular, I guess, out there as well. And word lists. Part of that is also not just looking out for images, but also doing word lists. Here's like tons of word lists that I was doing. I was actually circling certain words that were popping out to me a little bit more that I knew would, help me out. And again, I would go onto the dictionary and thesaurus and go stem off of words that I wrote down that I thought connected well with the brand. And then I would find more words that kind of stemmed off from there. So it was kind of like a word map of word lists for sure. But this definitely helps me understand a little bit about how I'm going to design this logo or design this piece and the mood of the piece, because all of these words are very supportive in the elements that I choose. Team brainstorm. This is another process step of brainstorming. You could, if you have a significant other, you could pull them in. I always used my ex-husband. I always pulled him into my projects and asked him, can you brainstorm with me, or my, other friends of mine, or if you're, lucky enough to have a design team around you, family members, whatever, get them involved, get some ideas. Hey, what would you do if you, had this problem, and start kind of brainstorming. It's kind of crazy how certain ideas come from people who might not even be in the design field. So you could really find some cool stuff going on. Here I am kind of just sketching out ideas with the person that I'm brainstorming with. They're kind of giving me some insight too. Mind maps. And my middle part section that I'm basing this off of is the 6-step guide to graphic design methods. So I want to show that, and I'm branching these words of like roughs and research and problems, our process steps, branching off of that, and then kind of going through ideas that stem off of those. Mind maps are kind of really cool because by the end of your stems, the very end, you kind of come up with some really interesting possible ideas. All right, so after brainstorming, you go right into the 4th stage, design. So in step 4, we apply creative skills, starting with thumbnail sketches to visualize ideas. So thumbnails, take pencil, pen, paper, start kind of, here I am sketching out some ideas for artifacts or things that can be done. The first one was like Polaroids on a wall. The other one was more of like with a energy drink. The one below is like a shoe. So here I am kind of taking those sketches and, talking about each of these ideas, because this isn't a logo per se, but this is more of an artifact, a whole piece. So I'm kind of explaining what this idea is, what this artifact is. Production is step 5. So after, after going through that, production is the next step. In step 5, we apply technical skills to formalize and finalize the project. Production could be prototype sketches, mock-ups, and digital comps. You know, here I am still on my thumbnail sketch stage, but I'm kind of dealing with a mock-up, digital mock-ups, looking at paper cups. Maybe that could be tied into my whole artifact. Inspiration for mock-up, I went out and actually got coffee cans to represent my energy drink that I was going to play around with. So here I am doing prototypes, taking pictures of what the label, so I ended up going with an energy drink idea. Here I'm at playing with the label that's on there, and I wanted to make it interactive because I think teenagers nowadays like that, where it's form and function. So I was trying to maybe integrate the label in some way so that it could be used in a different way. And I think that kind of ties into the whole graphic design concept very nicely too. So here's the label that I'm playing around with. And then the label peels off and explains what graphic design is, what our steps are, but then it also shows the steps into making this cup so that you can pour your energy drink into it. And here I am kind of starting the production. So this is all step 5 production. I go to Illustrator. I'm starting to design the actual label that will be wrapped around the can. And this label is kind of hard to see right now because it will be folded up. But basically, the label starts in the middle where it's telling you, hey, you know, what is graphic design? And then you follow through, this little mouse kind of follows through and talks to the target audience with those LOL, oh my God, OMG acronyms there, kind of telling you what graphic design is in their language. And then on the inside of the cup, it's showing our design steps as designers, but in kind of a fun way that speaks to the target audience. So here I am refining the actual label and mocking it up. It's nice to see these steps, you know, because sometimes we don't do this, you guys don't do this elaborate of projects, but at least you see the steps being put into place. Here I am cutting up the label to make into this cup. There's the label itself, and then I actually had to paint the can, so I'm really just trying to make a mock-up for my final project here. I go into Illustrator, I start thinking about how the can's gonna look, the actual can itself, what will it look like, and I kind of did another painted example with a label wrapped around. And then here is the actual label that will be formed into a cup. This is the final project. So these are all mock-ups, again, production. So on the can on the right is kind of the final can. And when you unfold it, it will look like on the left there. So it's kind of like it works as a label, but it also is a cup. And it's explaining what, you know, what graphic design is and our process steps. So that's the final project. So that's the production stage. And then you have the last stage, which is 6, the launch, print, and finalize. In step 6, put the project online or in process and we evaluate. Scrutinizing in order to judge the value of our ideas, first conceptually in relation to our initial goals, and then practically as designed, produced, and implemented. This is me kind of getting that more feedback from this stage too. I actually had a video I created of the product in use as well, and I was getting feedback about that. So those are the steps, and here's just real quick steps that you will do. Maybe I just showed you very, very thorough steps, but for this project, this is steps very quickly that you can do. So you can gather this information. You can write it down on a piece of paper or print out what you got as a PDF and start making notes. Gather this information, you know, do your research, do your mind maps, do your adjective words, lists, brainstorm, do your sketches. Yours might look like this, your 20 sketches, you know, just make sure you're putting numbers next to them. This one's kind of a bad one to show you, but at least you can see I'm kind of playing around with different ideas. Here's more of the nicer looking ones with the squares. So that's my sketches. You can see how bad my illustration skills are. Kind of playing around with the idea, and then print it out. That was step 4. So thumbnails continue. Print it out. See what it looks like on your printer. Oops. you know, that's a good way to see if you can see it smaller, larger, if, you know, if there's anything that needs to be addressed. That's always a good way to do it. So here's the inside of my cup, and just kind of want to show you very quickly. I know you can't see all of this, but you can see a little bit more close up. The problem is in the red, so that's kind of what the first step is, knowing what the problem is. 2, do your homework, so research. 3, brainstorm. 4, roughs. 5, analyze. And the purple is launch and finalize. So I think that's the end of my slides. So yeah, that was a really cool project. It was really interesting to go through all of those process steps very thoroughly. This was probably like 2 or 3 week project. So it, you know, obviously it took a little longer, but there was a lot of research that had to be done. Any questions from, you know, what you saw so far? You know, I'm kind of just doing a lot of overview, but.
No, not yet.
No, okay. Alrighty, so we ended yesterday on your assignment 2. Did you have any questions about assignment 2 before we actually wrap this up? Because I'm actually at the end of my lecture right now. We're a little early, but I like to allow time for people to show their work. Sometimes not everybody shows up either.
No, I think you answered the only question I really had, and that was about the thumbnails.
Okay. Yeah, so just make sure, you know, you're getting your thumbnail sketches in. It should, I would say just put them on one page. If you can't get it on one page, 2 is fine. I'm not going to be a stickler about it. Just make sure you're not doing 20 separate pages, you know. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a scanner. You know, if you have a phone, you can take a picture of it. Just make sure you're taking a picture and it's a nice picture. You can see the thumbnails. If not, you need to adjust it. I mean, nowadays there's so many Photoshop, you can adjust it in before submitting it. Yeah, I've had students that submit stuff and I can't even see it because it's so light, you know, and that they took a bad picture of it or something like that. So make sure your picture looks good. And don't forget to choose one of the promising concepts from your thumbnail sketches. Create 3 different black and white logo designs using Illustrator. So you might want to kind of play around with the different typefaces that you think are appropriate, the shape of it, positioning, hierarchy, all that good stuff. So we don't have to do color as of yet. All right. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. If you have any questions going forward, let me know. I'm going to be around obviously all weekend. I'm here all week. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want me to look at something, I can give you some feedback. You can email me your logos if you want some extra feedback. That's what I'm here for. So.
Well, thank you, and I will try to catch next week's live session as well.
Okay, Alicia, thanks for coming in, and I'll be seeing you guys on the boards.
All right, thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks.
You do the same. Bye-bye.
Thank you.